Okay, so we're back in the Rambam's Mishneh Torah. I apologize that I got away from this for a long time, and I really didn't want to. I actually wanted to continue with this daily, but this chapter specifically is very difficult. It's difficult for a couple different reasons, but so we are in the Mishneh Torah, Sefer Ahavah. This is the second book, the book of love. We're in Hilchot, Tefillin, Mezuzah, and Sefer Torah, so the laws of Tefillin, Mezuzah, and Sefer Torah. So Perach Het, chapter 8, we are dealing with all the open and closed sections or paragraphs of the Torah. And it goes through, and it kind of, some of this stuff requires visual, and some of it is, it's just literally naming every paragraph that's in the Sefer Torah. So it is actually really long. It is hard. It is hard because it requires, like I say, some structure and some visuals, which I don't have for this. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to read certain parts of this, and if this is something important to you, please go online to Sefaria or wherever else you can find this. I do have links in the description for these things to where you can find it online, or get yourself a copy and go through it. But I'm going to just kind of blaze through this paragraph, this chapter, so we can get to chapter 9 and continue on with this, because it's difficult. So there's also another thing, the way that the Rambam details how a Sefer Torah is supposed to be doesn't exactly come out with the way that it is today. And most people don't realize this, and my understanding is that some versions of the Rambam have been modified so that it corresponds to what we have today. And I don't want to get into that discussion, because it actually doesn't take away from the actual content of the Sefer Torah. But people will use that argument to say that the Sefer Torah that we have today is worthless. Like that, it breaks from tradition, when in reality, they don't even understand that that's like, you're talking about spacing of things. You're not talking about content. So because it's a very big topic that is beyond me, I could tackle it. I know I've dealt with this stuff in the past, but it's not something I've dealt with recently. So I'm just going to try and blaze through this chapter. Apologize, and then we'll get to chapter 9. So chapter 8, an open portion. So parasha petucha has two possible forms. If one completed the previous portion in the middle of the line, he should leave the rest of the line empty and begin the open portion at the beginning of the second line. So basically, you have your lines that you're writing, and if it ends there, you leave a space to the end, and then you start the other line, right? Okay. When does this apply? When there is a space the size of 9 letters remaining in the line. But if only a bit of space remains, or if one finished at the end of the line, he should leave the entire second line empty of text and should begin the open portion at the beginning of the third line. And they give an example here, but it's not a very good, I could turn my book and show you, but it's not a very good illustration. I'm sorry. So there are three possible forms to a closed portion. Closed portion is parasha setuma. So think of it as samech is like closed like a circle. So it's a closed portion. And you'll actually see the pei and the samech if you look in the Hebrew side of your Tanakh. All throughout the entire Tanakh, you will see the paragraphs, the Hebrew paragraphs will have the samech and the pei to show you whether those are opened or closed. So the betucha is opened and setuma is closed. All right. So there are three possible forms to a setuma, so a closed portion. If one finished the previous portion in the middle of a line, he should leave a space equal to the measure of 9 letters and begin writing at the end of the line from the beginning of the closed portion, so that the space is in the middle, like so. And it just has you're writing, there's a space of those 9 letters, and then you continue writing the line, and then that paragraph will continue down. And I do want to point out, the Judaism, I say this all the time. So I joke about this because there's this book that has, it's like teaching Hebrew, and the author says that English and Hebrew have no relation. And I joke because all the time, everywhere I turn, there is a connection between Hebrew and English. So the word we have for period, so like the period at the end of a sentence, what does it do? It separates one statement from another statement. And it's interesting because in Hebrew, the root, pei, resh, dalet, so parad, in different vowel forms, it means to separate something. Just like a mule, it can't mate. So it comes from that root. It can't mate because it's separate from all the other animals because it can't mate and make another mule, right? Because it's a donkey and a horse, the offspring, right? So a period is like you're talking about a certain designation and go, okay, so we have the word parsha, which is where we get the word paragraph. The Hebrew text of the Torah invented paragraphing. Like Greek, if you look at the Greek text, ancient Greek text, they literally write letter after letter after letter with no spaces between words and no spaces between paragraphs. Paragraphing is an innovation of the Torah. It is divine. It is an innovation of the Torah. And it comes from, like our word, parashah. So we say like the Torah portion, which is like the Torah parsha for the week. But in reality, when we say the parsha, like Balak for this last week, like parsha Balak is referring to just that paragraph where it says, where it starts out talking about the beginning of that Torah portion. In reality, the word for the entire portion that we read for the week is called a sidra. And language has been, kind of jumbled over the years. We have used less exactness in our terminology, but that is what it is. So I will continue on here after I taught you that. If there is not enough space left in the line to allow for the prescribed empty space and also to write a single word at the end of the line, one should leave the entire remainder of the line empty and should leave a bit of space at the beginning of the second line and should begin writing the closed portion, so the satuma, parshat satuma, from the middle of the line like so. And basically it has, so this is kind of like our paragraphs today. You write, you come to the end, and that's the end of your statement there. And then in the next line, instead of writing all the way from the column, it's indented a little bit. And that's how our paragraphs typically work in books today. Like if I grab a book, so like this book, you see how we indent right there. So that's kind of the idea of the satuma that it's talking about here. If there's not enough space left at the line to allow for the prescribed empty space and also to write a single word at the end of the line, one should leave the entire remainder of the line empty and should leave a bit of space at the beginning of the second line. So that's where we get indentations in our books today. And also, I do want to point out, how like if you look at an old book, like the beginning of a paragraph or the beginning of a chapter has a really big letter, the first letter is really big. That comes from the Torah as well. That's the innovation from the Torah because the word, like the book of Bereshit, starts with a big bait. And then the Christians, whenever they started writing their Bibles, they did the same thing. Even though they didn't write in Hebrew, they took the first letter and made it big, and then it passed on into all kinds of other books and literature. So the Torah has really been the forerunner for grammatical structures and paragraphing structures and all sorts of writing innovations over the years. So if one completed the previous portion at the end of the line, he should leave the prescribed amount of space at the beginning of the second line and should begin writing the closed portion from the middle of the line like so. And it gives you an example, and it's basically the same thing where it's in that second line is indented in. So it follows that an open portion, so parsha satuma, parsha patucha will always begin at the beginning of a line, while a closed portion will always begin in the middle of a line. So satuma is always going to be indented, and patucha will always start at the column, right? A Torah scroll which has not been checked for errors of full spelling and short spelling words may be repaired and checked, as we have explained. But if there are errors in the spacing of portions, that is a parsha patucha, if it has been written as satuma, or if a parsha satuma has been written as a patucha, as opened, the page. Or if one left a space, leaving it empty where no new portion begins, or if one wrote without interruption, did not leave a space where a new portion begins, or if one changed the form of the Song of the Sea or Ha'azino. So if you're familiar with this, if you look in a Sefer Torah, the Song of the Sea, so what is that, Exodus 15, is written with a certain structure where it's almost like boom, boom, and then boom, one in the middle, boom, boom, one in the middle, like that. And Ha'azinu is written like two columns within the same. So you have the major column, we'll call it that, and then you have two sub-columns where the words are written like that. So like one phrase, the next phrase, one phrase, the next phrase, all the way down. So if you changed the form of those songs, that's Deuteronomy 32 and Exodus 15. It is disqualified and cannot be repaired. The Sefer Torah cannot be repaired. And one must remove the entire page in which he erred. So when it says remove the page, so you have the sections of the skin, the hide is sewed together with sinew, or basically like what you want to call it is like the sinew. You can remove that, but you can't repair it. You can't scratch off the letters and try to write it the correct way. Actually, scratching off words on a writing is like called a palimpsest. So if you see that term passed around whenever you're looking in notes of books, that's what it means. It means that there's been a book that somebody scratched off, and they used that page to write on it. So this is what happened in antiquity because writing materials were very, very rare. Okay. Since I have seen great confusion regarding these matters in all the scrolls I have seen, and since the experts on scriptural traditions, the Mezuzah, who write and compose treatises to identify the closed portions and open portions, differ on these matters, depending on the variations in the text upon which they rely, I saw fit to write here in all the portions of the Torah, closed and open in the forms of the songs, so that all scrolls can be examined and corrected from herein. The scroll upon which we have relied in these matters is the famed Egyptian Codex, which includes the 24 books of the Torah, prophets, and scriptural writings, which was kept in Jerusalem for several years to examine other scrolls against it. And all relied upon it as it was reviewed by Ben Asher, who examined it precisely for many years and reviewed it many times whenever he copied it. I have relied upon it in the Torah scroll that I wrote according to its laws. And I think what he's referring to, I think many people believe that what he's referring to is the Aleppo Codex. But the problem is the Aleppo Codex was damaged from war and everything. It up until, fairly recent times, it was complete. But because of some wars, it was actually damaged, and now the entire Torah is gone, with the exception of a little bit left of the book of Deuteronomy. But it does contain the rest of the Tanakh. So the rest of the 24, the rest of the books like of Joshua, Judges, 1st, 2nd Samuel, all that, all the way through. But basically, it's a text used for correcting, and so there is, like I say, there's controversy over this, and there's dispute and everything. So here we go. Now it says the book of Bereshit. So Sefer Bereshit. He's going to give you so it says Yehi Rakia V'kavu Hamayim Yehi Ma'orot Yish Retzu Hamayim Totze Haaretz V'hulu Ele Toldot Hashemayim Kulan Yehulu Ele Toldot Hashemayim. Oops, maybe I said that wrong, that line twice. Kulan Petuchot Vehain Sheva Parashiot. So the problem is that he's giving you, he says these are all the opened, these are all open and are 7 portions. So from the book of Bereshit. What is that? He's going, okay, so he's going in order of all the paragraphs from in Bereshit, and he's telling you which ones are open and closed. So, like I say, this is difficult to go through, because he's going to say, this one's open, this one's closed, this one are open, this one's closed, something like that. So, this is very difficult, because he's going to go through all of these books, and this would be very hard to go through, take a lot of time. So if this is something you're concerned with, like I say, I'm going to just scan through this. I do want to... Okay, so the number in the book of Bereshit, the number of open portions is 43 and closed portions 48, which is 91 portions in all. So that's his conclusion for the book of Bereshit. Now he goes through the book of Shemot, the Elah Shemot. And he goes through and he tells you which ones are open and closed. And he goes through. And his conclusion is the number of open portions is 69, and of closed portions, 95. That is 164 portions in all. And then he goes and he picks up with Vayikra. It says, V'im min hatzon is closed. And he continues on. And his conclusion is, at the end, the number of open portions is 52, and of closed portions is 46. That is 98 portions in all. And then he picks up with the book of Bamidbar. So the book of Bamidbar Sinai, and he starts enumerating. And his conclusion here, the number of open portions is 92, and of closed portions 66. That is 158 portions in all. Okay, now he picks up the book of Eled Devarim. V'yomer Hashem Eli, excuse me, and he goes through again and he names all of them open and closed. And his conclusion at the end. The number of open portions in this book is 34, and of closed portions 124. That is 158 portions in all. The number of open portions in the entire Torah is 290. And closed portions 379, for a total of 669 portions. So 669 paragraphs basically in the Torah. Okay, and then he says, the form of the song of Ha'zinu is that each and every line has a space in its center of 9 letters, like the form of a closed portion, so that each line is split into 2. It is written in 67 lines. These are the words that begin each. And it says Ha'zinu, Ya'arof, and then he continues on down. So basically, he's enumerating how the song of Ha'zinu in Deuteronomy chapter 32 is structured. Okay, then he comes. It says the song of the sea is written in 30 lines. The first line is written normally, so meaning like all across, right? The first line is written normally. The other lines are written in the following alternating pattern. So. In one, a gap is left in its center, and in the next, the gap is left in 2 places in its center, so that the line is split into 3. This way, one line's gap faces the script above it, and the next line's script faces the gap above it. So basically, the top line is all the way across, and you have like one word here, then you have a phrase here, and then one word here. And then in the next line, you have a phrase here, a big space, and then a phrase here. It continues like that. Boom, 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 and then boom, 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 boom. Okay. So you can look at this. Most of your printed Hebrew text of the Torah have this structured the way that it should be. Even your Siddur might even have it. So, and it is interesting because the Siddur, where it has the Song of the Sea for your morning Shachrit, some traditions you actually say Ha'azinu instead of the Song of the Sea. But anyway, continuing on, he actually enumerates that for you so you can see it with a visual. Okay. The entire Torah, he says, whether in the songs or the other portions of the text, one should aim that each letter should be quite close to its neighbor, neither joined to it nor so distant from it that the word would appear to be two words. Rather, there should be a hair's breadth between the letters, and if one distance one letter from another, resulting in the word appearing as two separate words to a child unfamiliar with the text, it is unfit for use until it is corrected. Okay, so that is the end of Perach Het, chapter 8. I apologize that I didn't go through it all with you, but it's extremely tedious to go through and enumerate all the paragraphs. If you want to learn that specifically, you can go to the links I have in the description and go pull this up and read it for yourself. But do keep in mind, there are different versions of the Mishneh Torah out there from different periods. Different groups have preserved it. And it is my understanding that some of them have been modified. I don't know, one or some have been modified so that it fits to the majority of what we have today rather than what he originally wrote. So just keep that in mind. I don't know exactly which ones they are, if it's like Mos Naim, or this is, I'm reading from the one that you can get off of Chabad. This actually has the Rebbe's commentary in it, but I don't read the Rebbe's commentary normally in these videos. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope after I got through this difficult chapter, because I didn't just understand like what I should do with this, we could hopefully we'll be able to get back on this course and nail down a lot of the Mishneh Torah every day, and hopefully we'll blaze through and get through all these books. The whole series, wonderful, beautiful, halacha every day. Okay, thanks for watching.